And there's us, live at just after 7 o'clock. This is Molby On The Spot. I'm Trev Downey. I'm here in my field in beautiful rural Ireland, or Anfield as it appears. And I'm joined, of course, by your friend of mine, the Liverpool legend, Mr. Jan Molby. Good evening, Jan.
Good evening, Trevor. How are you? I mean, it's been one heck of a week.
Could we get any more incident into this week? And it's, I think, predominantly good. I think the only people who are going to be a bit bent out of shape about anything this week are people who have that little part of them, like I spoke about, that I have in me, where you don't want to see good things happening to other clubs. But let's get there when we get there. And there's only one story to start with. That is the Virgil van Dijk contract. Very curious to hear what you make of this. We kind of knew from a couple of weeks back now at this stage. And then when Mo signed, I think there were all these kind of hints getting dropped by Virgil himself, by Mo in a post-match interview. So we knew for sure, anyone who was a bit iffy about it, for at least a week. And then it drops a little bit earlier than everyone thought. You know, people were expecting it might happen on a Friday. But here we go on Thursday with the news. When you saw it confirmed, obviously the shock element isn't the same, or the surprise element isn't the same. But I think it's a thing that has to be celebrated at the same time, Jan, isn't it? Because I feel like now, with Mo and Virgil in situ for next season, it feels like there's no reason or excuse for it to be called a transitional season.
No, absolutely not. I think we spoke about it last week, didn't we, Trevor? The importance of Mo and Virgil staying. Obviously, we won't have to spend that money on replacing them. But also, as you rightly said, it kind of takes care of what can we expect of next season. Well, we expect something similar to this season in terms of what we could deliver, what the others deliver. You know, we can't influence, isn't it? But we expect, again, Liverpool to be able to be running at certainly mid-80s in terms of points, 85 points plus. And that would be good enough to compete, isn't it? And in terms of being to attract other people and able to convince them that things are still good, I feel it's important that you big boys. So I generally think FSG gets a lot of criticism. They're pretty good at it. I think it's like they more or less manage to keep players that we want to keep going. You know, and that part. I think all years there's been. We had this last time with Mo as well, didn't we? We're unsure what he was going to say, but they managed to get on, isn't it? In their way. You know, like what time for that, isn't it? As we discussed, isn't it, that this situation got out of hand a little bit in shop. The club could no longer hold this. You know, so they had to be patient. And I think in the end, I think they played the blind. I have to say to them, I think they played the. You know, instead of being for, you know, feeling you having to do it right now because of the fan base or the media, isn't it? Kind of play the way that they wanted to put them there. So instead of you, East, Trevor, you got Virgil.
Yeah. I mean, I get all sorts of input, because we do a transfer show on the channel, Jan, that people love it because people love transfers. It gets a lot of talking going, and it generates a lot of opinion to push back against anything we put out. And one of the things that came out in the immediate aftermath was Jonathan Northcroft spoke in the Sunday Times, I think it was, in his article about now that it looks likely that the two deals are going to get done, and this is before Virgil was confirmed, that, you know, it was one of these kind of wet blanket articles, because it was talking about how that's going to eat up considerable amount of funds, and now, unless there are outgoings, there probably won't be a whole lot of incomings. And it felt very much like one of those things that gets rolled out via the mainstream, by some of the major journalists to manage expectations, which is, you know, a classic trick across the board in business and government, and we've seen it increasingly in football. But I don't know necessarily that the sums work on that. in terms of the extra the two lads are going to be getting paid. We didn't really get a huge amount of details around Mo. We know Mo was already earning anything up to $500,000 a week with all his extra bits and bobs. And we are being told now, Jan, that it's up to 400,000 for Virgil. And, you know, a fella your age or my age hears that and you just shake your head. It makes no fucking sense. It's like, what? You know, you've got to, you do a couple of months, you're set for years. Most people with that kind of money, you do a couple of years, it's generational wealth for your family. It's wild. But parking that for a second, did you hear any of this kind of mumbling already, or is that a separate thing to you? Do you think that doesn't necessarily or shouldn't necessarily impact on the recruitment that we know is very much needed?
I'd be as if that is the case. You know, I think that, and of course this is not an official line, just think that we more or less get towards that this is going to be someone for Liverpool, isn't it? This is kind of the way it's been planned for top this summer ago. We're going to try and this next team who's going to be able to get the top for the next 5-6 years. How much more final outlay is there for Virgil? It surely can't be that. Surely can't be that much that if we need to, the sale of one of our reserve players that might never be in the first team squad should be able to take care of that. There will also be some bonuses that will to play because of the league from some of us. There's also the new kit deal with Adidas, isn't it? So the only thing I will say is that I have no history of John Lawcroft being in a little click or people get a little nudge, but I can understand why he would, because he's a very respectful journalist. So I would think at right this moment in time that there wouldn't be a lot in that. You know, I think the plans are in place that they want to do things. We the thing is, Trevor, we know how they want to do business, don't they? You know, we talk about the strikers and possibly most of the strikers being up for sale. Not that we're going to sell all 4 of them, but we want to see what's out there, who's prepared to give us some money before we can go and do what we want to do, isn't it? So we know how the club does business, isn't it? So, but I think if we look back last season, Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes didn't do a lot apart from getting roughly 60 million for Van den Berg and Carvalho to Brentford and the young boy Clark to Australia. And I think that's good business. I think they've proven again that they can get top dollars for players that we don't want. So if I was Liverpool, I wouldn't be overturned right this moment in time. I think the plan are that, and I think that comes from Arne, really. Arne couldn't have been any clearer, could he, Trevor, in terms of what do I think of the squad? You know, these are the 14.5 players I trust, isn't it? You know, surely they've all noticed that. I'm sure they spoke to Arne and gone, why do you play these same players every week? And well, because these are the players who's best suited the way I want to play. These are the players that I trust, isn't it? But I need more players. I probably need another 5 players, certainly 2 of them for now, and 3 maybe squad players for the future. So get it sorted, Richard.
Yeah, you've you've kind of nailed it on the head there for me, because if anyone will have noticed what Arne thinks about his squad, it will be the players. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
How many times in this show have we spoken about that? You've given us the insight about what the back rooms are like, what the dressing rooms like, what the behind the scenes is like with lads who are not in the team, and they talk about it amongst themselves. And I have this theory, yeah. And by the way, listen, I don't know, there's a couple of lads in the comments reckon that there's a bit of static coming off your mic. I don't know if there's anything rubbing off it there, but just said I'd say it to you, or if there's anything touching off your microphone. Is there by any chance there? No. Okay. Cool. Just some people thought they could hear a bit of interference. Looking around the squad then, because again, I'd like to get your opinion on this in terms of things that we have to address. It's been glaringly obvious for the last couple of games, and you know, kind of really pointedly so, that the left back thing is starting to come into sharp relief. And I had a theory that I floated out on the transfer show last night, and I wouldn't mind getting your take on it. We saw Andy Robertson have an absolutely horrific outing and then not start, and Tsimikas start in the last match. And then Tsimikas get hooked very early and Andy Robertson come on. And the first thing people were saying is, managing minutes and stuff like that. And I'm thinking Tsimikas is fit. There's one game a week. This makes no sense. That's not managing minutes. No. So there's only a couple of things I think that could be going on there. One is that the manager really doesn't fancy him and he doesn't want him on the pitch any more than he has to be on. Or two, he felt it was really important to rehabilitate Andy Robertson, which, if that was the case, that didn't go well. So I'm wondering where you ended up landing on the left back situation.
So I've ended up in this position, Trevor, and we spoke about this, and we feel the need for a left back. And I've landed where I'm thinking that Tsimikas is the one we're going to try and move on, and we're going to buy competition for Andy Robertson. And I think that'll be really interesting how we view that competition in terms of what can that new player expect from day one, because it's very, very difficult. Sometimes, and I'm not suggesting this is what we should do, but sometimes when you have key senior players, and Robertson is one of them, he's much more than just a great footballer. He's also a great voice in the dressing room. Sometimes, if they're at your club, they have to play because otherwise they could be very difficult situations to manage, isn't it? So my feeling right this moment in time is that Tsimikas is the one we're going to try and move on. We're going to try and buy some competition for the next 12 months for Andy Robertson. And as I said before, I'll just say it once more. It'll be interesting to see what type of competition we're viewing. Are we potentially looking at a 21, 22-year-old who got greatness, who can come in and play, and if he has a little struggle, the jersey might be a bit heavy to start with, whatever, then Rob was always there. But that's where I'm at the moment. Whereas, had you asked me 6-8 months ago, I would have thought, because of his sort of standing, Andy Robertson, and you think that, and I think he would be honest enough if you sat down with him and go, what is it that you want now? He said, well, I want to play, I want to be able to play. So if that's the case, then he would also have insurance from the manager, wouldn't he, Andy Robertson? If I'm doing okay, even if we should bring somebody else in, it's still a fair fight, and that's where I've ended up, is that we're going to try and make it a fair fight for the next 12 months, and then obviously time catches up with all of us, and then it's time for the new board to maybe step in.
So with all that said, then where do you sit with the will not go away ever rumor about Milos Kerkez, who's clearly, theoretically at least, plug and play, in that he's had quite a few games now for Bournemouth, approaching 60 games, I think, or something like that over 2 seasons. And he's looking like a kind of eye-catching footballer. I don't know if it was you or someone else mentioned to me before, and I was researching him there yesterday, and I discovered he was literally caught the eye of Paolo Maldini. It's a good sign. And went on then and played with another Arne-linked club in Alkmaar. So there's quite a lot going on there that would suggest that guy might be the thing. Except the thing is, we keep hearing this 40, 45, up to 50 million type number. And Man City pay that kind of money for fullbacks. Liverpool don't. Nobody else does. So what you're saying would suggest it's not going to be someone as high profile as Kerkez. It might be more of a project player. Would that be fair to say? Is that how I'm interpreting what you're saying?
Yeah, probably, Trevor. And I'm with you on this. And I have to guess a little bit here, Trevor. And I don't know if you spoke about this on one of the other podcasts that you do, but we tend not to spend an awful lot of money on defenders. We haven't paid for the defender apart from Ramsey, the young boy Ramsey from Aberdeen, was it? I think before him, Konate was probably the last one that we paid for, so we kind of want to try and avoid that. So I have no names, Trevor, because I always think that you're trying to link Liverpool with these players, and sometimes it's a little bit lazy, Yeah, Kirk is a good player. take nothing away from that. Is his profile right for Liverpool? It appears so. And then, of course, the big link is Richard Hughes. And would Richard Hughes have an insight on his contract? Because there's one thing Liverpool love as a football club, it's a clause, isn't it? You know, he has a release clause, we just go and pay that, and he's ours, isn't it? So I don't necessarily think that it's him. Give you a name, Trevor. I can't. This is kind of also what I like about how Liverpool do things. And I'm absolutely sure that they would have a short list of maybe 3 or 4 left backs, and probably 2 of them that we'd go, who's that? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, and there are names floating about, but like you say, there's nothing that is anything tangible to it. If we got a Night Nuri or a Hato, people will be happy with those. But again, I think it's going to come down to the arrangement that Robertson feels he has with the manager. I spoke about this last night in terms of, I think people will be incredibly naive if they were to think that Andy Robbo won't be completely bent out of shape if he's not number one. And, you know, I was talking about the arrogance of Kirkes during the week, where he did this little tweet where he said, like, you know, he was bigging himself up. And, you know, whereas I think confidence is super, I think it's not super, it's essential for anyone who wants to succeed. Public displays of confidence, I'm not really a fan of that, never have been. Not when it's egregious. Quiet confidence is great. But Andy Robertson is a guy who's just burning with pride. He's just one of those guys. And we played an interview from, I think he was away in Scotland duty, and he was asked about this idea of, you know, Liverpool being linked with left backs. It was probably around the last transfer window. And his take on it was very, very clear. He spoke about how he was lucky, and then he corrected himself. Well, it wasn't really luck to have played for one of the best clubs in the world for 8 years, you know, to be the starting left back at Liverpool and so on and so forth. He's hugely proud of that. And again, this is where your experience comes in here, man. Having been around professional footballers of similar character, having gone through the sort of process of, you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to be number one pick here yourself. Everyone, it happens to all footballers. It strikes me as highly unlikely that Robertson would go quietly. And I think, and we may be about to see this, Jan, if and when the league gets done, I think there's quite a few lads that stories will start to emerge about who have felt the cold wind around them because Arne's not been that fond of them. I feel, for example, the minute the league is won, and please God, that will be soon, I think you're going to hear Darwin Núñez stories every week, every second day. I think you're going to hear stories about disgruntled Harvey Elliott, and none of them you couldn't criticize any of them. Once the job is done, you couldn't criticize any of them because they are really on the outs. But Robertson is clearly the favorite of the manager, and yet is he? That's where I'd be with it, you know. What do you think about that guy's personality accepting a squad role?
Well, I find that difficult. Had he been 2 or 3 years older, I might have been able to see some minded. But the thing is that you're highly competitive. Andy Robertson is a great club man until he's not, you know, until you kind of bypass it. And you said before, I would probably say that towards the back end of my Liverpool career, I didn't play a lot, but I always had a chance of playing because I could play in a few positions. So if I have to compare it with anyone, it'd probably Ronnie Whelan. When time sort of moved on from Ronnie, and Ronnie had been like, oh, wow, Ronnie's a great club man, he's been here forever. But the moment that he felt that, you just called it his old win, the moment he felt the cold wind, he goes, this is not why I play football. You know,
yeah.
I play to play, and I have 100% that Robertson would be the same, and I'm 100% that he ain't going to take lying down, not being involved. He'd be quite happy if the manager goes, fair fight, the best man plays, and he'll give that real go. That's for sure, isn't it? But these highly competitive athletes, Trevor, you know, they're great to have on your side until it's like you're with me or you're against me, you know. And for the majority of the time, they're with you. But sometimes things are against you, isn't it? And that's when that comes into you, and you go, nah, I'll go somewhere else, and I'll play football somewhere else, isn't it? So Robertson, he's been great during his time at Liverpool, isn't it? And I just hope that they find a way of being able to manage that situation.
Yeah, I think Robertson's one of those lads who eventually you see it yourself. You've been you've donned many a jersey in Legends games, and when I introduce you every week, I don't use that word lightly. A lot of people use the word lightly. We've seen several Liverpool legends who would be players of not quite the same profile, but I don't think anyone could really argue that Andy Robertson, having been there for the Klopp era, front and centre, and a key performer and a really inspirational performer week in, week out, I think that guy's earned his already at this stage, earned his Liverpool legend tag. And, you go back through the era, and of course there were great left backs. But I remember doing the sums on this. We were putting together an all-time Liverpool 11. I think I got you in on this just to annoy you with it as well. And because I'm the age I am, I had actually placed, and this is where we're going next, I placed Trent in there because the dude was the best in the world. And maybe still is. Probably still is at his best. Of course he is. And it was a real wrangle about who would go in at left back. And there's been some amazing players. And I think, people just because they wanted to represent them, some people put in Emlyn Hughes there. Some people thought, well, Alan Kennedy's won the lot. And he was such a clutch player for Liverpool as well in big games. I ended up putting Steve Nicol in there because I didn't see a way of not including Nicol because he was such an important part of that squad that you were part of. But I think Robertson's got a shout of being included in some people's all-time 11s. That kind of says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, and absolutely, and rightly so. And he's also one of those. The story goes well with Liverpool, doesn't he? His background. I mean, you just mentioned people like Emlyn Hughes and whatever, Steve Nicol. The background of these guys, where they come from and how they fought their way. I mean, one thing is you have to start your career somewhere. And obviously, Andy started up in the lower leagues in Scotland. And loads of people have that story. But what I always felt with Andrew Robertson is that when he went to Hull and he got relegated, and I remember doing one of the games just before they got relegated, and I said, well, there's a couple of players here that the Premier League won't allow to play in the Championship, and that's the left back and the centre half. The centre half was Harry Maguire. But of course, they did. They played in the Championship, which for me was unbelievable that they were allowed to play there. So he had to fight his way back again out the Championship, back into the Premier League with Hull, isn't it? Then having to prove it all over again because obviously the last time he was there, it wasn't enough to catch anyone's eye, So he had to do it all over again, isn't it? So yeah, it's a great story, isn't it? And then he comes to Liverpool, the determination. I think he's just had a look around when he arrived in Anfield. He's gone, this is what I wanted. This is all worth it now. So now I've got to make the most of this again. So it's another battle, isn't it? And yeah, he's achieved that. It's fair to say that, arguably he was certainly in the top 3 best left backs in the world for the period of time. That in itself is incredible high praise.
For sure. The elephant in the room is the lad on the far side that I've briefly mentioned, and I just want to take it in here while we're still on the defence and Virgil, and we'll wrap it up with 1 or 2 takes on you from you on Virgil. But the quiet, the silence around Trent is all the evidence you need that this deal is about to get done. And yet, the longer it goes on, there's all these whispers about why and why it hasn't been announced or why there's nothing official or whatever. In terms of strong rumors, but I think there were enough at the time for it to be safe enough in everyone's minds that it's likely to happen. And some people were saying that the club wanted to get the contracts announced with the other 2 before they did anything or said anything. So I buy kind of into all of that. I'm very much of the opinion that the Trent heads off still. I think it's probably pipe dream to think anything otherwise at this stage, given his silence on it as much as anything else. But if we need a left back, good God, we clearly need a right back now. And it's going to be really interesting. Recruitment-wise, there's 2 positions straight away in the defence. And that's assuming that the rumours about Quansah to Newcastle or wherever are not true, that the rumours about Joe Gomez going are not true, that Ibu Konate is granted the deal that he wants, which is I think it's about 150% increase from 80,000 to 200,000. And, you know, in the greater scheme of things, he's obviously worth that. So there's a lot of addressing that to be done in the defence. But let's take a quick look at the right back situation. And you are never going to replace like for like now because there's no other player like Trent in the world, not really. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, this is where our boys, our you know, eggheads behind the scenes are really going to have to earn their crust, Jan. They're going to have to go out here and get us a nice balance between one lad who raids and one lad who holds the shop, or two lads who can do the lot, or whatever it happens to be. But it's going to be a big ask, this recruitment window.
Yeah, I mean, one thing for sure, we're not after like for like, Trevor.
No,
we're not looking for that type of a right back. That's for sure. It's more likely it's going to be a bit like Bradley. Bradley's a carrier, isn't he? He carries the ball. Trent passes the ball, and it's two completely different things, isn't it? So again, where do we go? And again, you know, not everybody, but people are talking about Jeremy Frimpong at Leverkusen. I just couldn't see him being defensively strong enough to play in the Premier League. He's more of a wing back. He's more of almost like a right winger, isn't he? So I can't see that. We're after a good technical footballer who has a lot of defensive teeth. I think that's what we're after, isn't it? But I think Arne's got a feel of how we can play, what we're capable of with our front three and with our midfield and whatever. So we want somebody there who's technically a good footballer, but probably strength is defending more than being able to do what Trent can do with the ball, isn't it? So, you know, again, where do we go? I really don't know. But we do need somebody because having one is not enough. And also Bradley's body is probably still adjusting to football at this level. And, you know, it might just be a case where next season he might have to play more games at that level than he's ever done. I'd be interested to see how his body copes.
Yeah, someone ran the numbers on it. I think even just the eye test would tell you he's been available for somewhere around half of the fixtures, which is not, you know, it's turned into a cliche, but the first time I heard it said was by one of our own here, Simon Brundish. The best ability is availability. It's a great, it's a good one. And, you know, when you think of someone like Mo Salah or Luis Suarez or someone like that, those guys, you just can't break them. They're always there. And, you know, when you ally that to talent as well, that's the dream tick. And I think Bradley has the talent. It would just be lovely to, as you say, hopefully he will adjust. An awful lot of lads as younger men do have those periods where it takes them a while for that to happen. In terms of Virgil, just a last word on this, because it has been such a saga. It'd be daft not to get a take from you. We did see a couple of high-profile errors from actually just before the contract got signed the last couple of weeks. Moments where, you know, you can see them doing the rounds on all sorts of social media and people having a great old laugh as he's doing air kicks or whatever, and kind of moments that we don't associate with this incredibly cool, suave Rolls Royce of a footballer. Now, that said, until the contract got done with Mo, it was diminishing returns from him as well. I think it's different in that I feel like we were starving Mo Salah off the football. And in the first half of the last match, Jan, we supplied Mo Salah with the football. Amazingly, it worked. Who'd have thought it? Seeing as it's been our freaking game plan all year. But with Van Dijk, I feel like, you know, it's so atypical to see any errors from him. He strikes me as the kind of lad who can play for a long time yet. It would not surprise me to see another year or two being added on to this 2-year contract, because we've seen precedent of fellas who look after themselves and who play where he plays, and they can play 37, 38, 39. Maldini's still going at 40. You know, it can happen. And lads have done it recently in the Premier League. So when you think about him going forward and longevity, that's kind of what I meant. Him and Mo can do it at a high level for another 2 years. So already we're out the gate looking good. So we sign a kid like Huyson from Bournemouth or something like that, or we sign an up-and-comer, playing alongside Virgil van Dijk is the thing that helps everybody get better. We've seen it with all our own footballers over the years. That's the thing that's most encouraging for me, that he's going to be around to probably train in his ultimate replacement, to bring on someone alongside him that will really, be able to make the step up then. That's exciting. But just watching Virgil, just sweeping up around and doing Virgil bits for another couple of years, it gives us such an edge on other teams. We focus on his mistakes, Jan, only because they're so rare.
Yeah, and it will always be like that, won't it? When he makes a mistake, and of course with the contract situation and with his age and whatever, and people are jumping all over that, isn't it? But I think Virgil's just kind of gone to the club, get this contract sorted, because otherwise I'm going to carry on playing like this, and this is not what you want to see. You know what I mean? So, obviously, but there's been stats about Virgil, hasn't it, in the last sort of 48 hours, isn't it? And the defensive stats are just ridiculous. In terms of, he never gets dribbled past. I know never, but it feels like he never gets dribbled past, isn't it? And when we talk about how long can you play for, again, there's no guarantee. But I look at that boy who left Chelsea last summer, Thiago Silva, and I always think that genuine world class, that boy, and so is Virgil. If he could play in the Premier League and look really good, even at 38, without the physical presence of Virgil van Dijk, without playing in a team as good as Liverpool, I can't see no reason why Virgil shouldn't be able to carry on at least for another 3 or 4 years.
Completely agree. We should move on because we've got our usual bits to get through as well. And we're looking at a situation where the league could get done sooner rather than later. That's what we're all hoping. Arsenal's latest sort of less than impressive result gave us another little stretch in our lead and made the points total that's required even less. We have Leicester at the weekend. But just before we go and look at what is still to be done, just to get a review, Jan, on what you thought of the last outing, because it was quite frustrating in a way, if we're being perfectly honest, that West Ham win. It was the Jimmy Greaves game of two halves kind of thing. Felt a little bit comfortable watching the first half because we looked good. There's some decent stuff getting done. Second half, not so much, and it felt like we were hanging on a bit, and the last chance of the game goes to them, and that sort of thing. What did you make of the outing as a whole? Is it kind of typical that that's going to be the case when the tension is where it is, or were you hoping we would sort of sweep away opposition just at least one of these weeks so we could feel like that was the way the title was nearly there, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I just don't think that's where we're at the moment. I don't think we're at that where we're going to produce like we did. And it's still my two favourite performers of the season were Real Madrid and Bayer Leverkusen. And I don't think that's where we're at the moment. We're at a different stage, but we're still winning. We won 5 of the last 6 league games, so there's not a problem in that. And we've just had to find something slightly different than what we haven't been asked to produce early on in the season, which is find a way of winning. So first half, as you say, we gave the ball to Mo. He got on with it. Gave the young left back a really, really torrid time. Second half, we've got to give it to Mo. We didn't play particularly well. Maybe we looked a little bit leggy again. And it is this thing. Once that creeps into your game, it's very, very difficult to kind of find your energy again. So was it a great performance? No, it wasn't, because we've seen great performance early on in the season. So it wasn't. But as I said before, we won 5 of the last 6. Now we go Leicester and Spurs, 2 teams who can't defend. So it kind of looks like these games are going to do it for us, Trevor. I know you're still a bit, but trust me, Trevor, it's okay.
I'll lean into your reassurance as we get on in the show. But just to take what we could out of West Ham as well. What I thought was really interesting was that Slot said afterwards, look at all the wins that we've had over the season. And it was basically aimed at people like me who were making comments about I'd like to see us win big. He said, like, none of the games that we've won have been comfortable wins or big wins, that we just win by the odd goal, or we win by a goal, or maximum 2 or whatever. And that's absolutely the case. And it's a weird contrast, something that we've been getting used to all year. But when it results in Liverpool being clear at the top, I think everyone can get their head around it. I mean, again, just to draw on your own experience, you've been part of all sorts of different setups over the years. Teams who maybe go out and blitz early on, teams who just dominate the ball all the way through matches, teams who chase the result and then sit back. That characteristic of the way that Arne Slot approaches the game, and the contrast to what we've been used to with Klopp, where a few games a season we will absolutely destroy teams 7-6, 7-0. It's just something we've gotten used to, even the very best or highest level. What do you make of that in terms of something that, do you enjoy the way that we play now? Can you enjoy a nice 2-1 win? You don't lean into the fan stuff as much, and you have the experience of having been there in teams. So what do you make of that, of the contrast between the ways of winning?
I don't think our identity is as clear as it was under Jurgen Klopp. There's not a Liverpool fan who didn't know what we tried to achieve with every single game when Klopp was our manager. That hasn't been so clear this year, because the manager is quite prepared to let us play in various structures. Whereas Klopp was always, this is how we play, and if it's not working, I want more of the same. Whereas Arne has done subtle changes during the game. So our identity can be from game to game slightly more difficult to really pin down that this is what we want to do. This is how we play today, isn't it? But I just think that, and although there hasn't been as many 3, 4, and 5, I still think that when you compare Liverpool to Arsenal, Liverpool have only failed to score 2 or more goals in 4 Premier League games this season. So that means that even if the opposition score 1, we normally get a minimum of 2. Yeah, Arsenal, Trevor, have had 15. They've had 15 matches where they've scored less than 2 goals. That's a massive difference, isn't it? You look at them Arsenal results and you think, well, you put Arsenal up to all but 4 games scoring at least 2 goals, they'd probably have another 10 points. So that's been another, that our attacking output, although it hasn't been like Jurgen Klopp and we haven't chased it in the same way, it's still what the manager feels. We need 2 goals in every game, yeah, and that's how we set up, isn't it? And once we get that 2 goal, our identity kind of changes again, doesn't it? So yeah, it's what makes it really interesting, isn't it? That there is less and less of these 3, 4, and 5 nils. There's more of these sort of where we just get it over the line with a little tactic. We put somebody on as a substitute. We shut the shop down, isn't it? So that's how I view it anyway.
Yeah, the contrast is so profound. I think a lot of people have difficulty with it, but when the results come in, you don't care. That tends to be the way. And at this stage of the season, when the title is there to be won, it's the only thing that matters is the actual win, as opposed to the nature of it. You mentioned Arsenal, and I wanted to ask you about them because we've obviously seen the Champions League stuff happening over the last couple of nights, and it can stick in the craw a little bit that Liverpool aren't there for sure. Especially when you see someone doing well and pushing on towards a potential final or semi-final at least. And Arsenal are one such team, and I don't think anyone would have called that result over 2 legs at all. I saw both games, I think, sort of pronouncedly better and well worth the win. Not many people have seen that coming. And it makes me sort of feel like there's a chance that they might really have, their names in this pot. I wonder about that. I genuinely do. When you see a couple of results like they've had, and, they're going to have tough opposition again in the semi-final. So if they get it, it'll have been well earned. Do you see in them a different sort of freedom in their European play or something like that? That maybe is it that the pressure is off with the league situation? What is it that has them able to put in a show like that and rack up goals in the way that they did over the 2 legs? of that quarterfinal. Do you have a feel for them going forward in the competition?
I don't know. I think the 4 semi-finalists are really interesting. I think they've, in their own rights, have all got something that allows them to potentially win the Champions League. In terms of Arsenal, going into the semi-final, they'll still be without Gabriel, the centre-half, who's been their best centre-half this season. They'll still be without a recognised number 9. But I'm glad you said this thing about there appears to be a bit more freedom in Arsenal's European games. So they played 12 European games. They've had 3-0 wins at home. They've scored 5 in Lisbon. They've scored 7 in Eindhoven. I think what happens in the European games, contrary to what happens when, let's say, Everton go to the Emirates and put 11 men behind the ball, that's when Arsenal struggle. I think in all their Champions League games, the opposition, maybe apart from when they played Inter Milan earlier in the season, have all had a go. And I think Arsenal quite enjoyed that. Having said all of that, I think PSG right now is probably the best team in Europe. They played the second leg at home against Arsenal. And obviously you saw PSG play at home against Liverpool when we somehow won 1-0. I don't know if you saw them play at home against Aston Villa, where they were even more impressive. So that's my big worry for Arsenal. Against Aston Villa, PSG had 355 successful passes in the final third. 355 in the final third. That, Trevor, is another level of brilliance, because you're under pressure non-stop, because they're in your final third playing successful passes, 355 off them. That is another level, that, Trevor. So never mind, it's one thing Arsenal are good at, it's shutting down space, it's being organised, the 2 wide men work really hard, get back in position. I just wonder whether anyone can cope with that type of brilliance in the final third of the pitch. I very much doubt it.
It's a great point. It's a really good point. And someone made a good point as well about Real last night and watching the game. I know you were watching that game and at that game. Whose bright idea was it to think that Vinicius and Mbappe, 2 lads who really don't contribute to that team structure, it's the contrast with PSG. People said, like, okay, Mbappe and Neymar together in a team is not a great idea for the idea of unity. And now we can see what a team working for each other looks like. Incredibly exciting going forward. You mentioned that. That's, as you said, that level of dominance to play so many passes in the opposition half. Tremendous stuff. But we see what a team they are. And we've seen the evolution in them as a team, not just the Galactico thing, but an actual team with a team philosophy. What did Real sort of drink their own Kool-Aid, do you think, a little bit, in terms of saying we'll just sign all the best players and we'll be fine? Because it just looked like a very disjointed sort of a setup, that they didn't have enough about them to really carry that threat to Arsenal, who with the best one in the world are a good team, but you would like to think that lot in their place would have been going hell for leather, and it was quite a shock to see how ineffective they were.
So obviously they got a lot of great players, Real Madrid, but I think they got a little bit carried away again in that, you remember the Galacticos, when they decided to go for the Galacticos and they just simply signed all the best players in the world. They didn't address their problems in the summer. I'm looking at them defensively and thinking you needed defensive reinforcement, but more than anything, they needed a central midfield player after Toni Kroos retired, and they needed somebody in there who could control that. So they failed to do all of that. Also against Arsenal yesterday at home, and they've had 8 days to prepare for this game. And the plan that they came up with was crosses. They put 42 crosses into Arsenal's box. Now, there's one thing that Arsenal's 2 centre-halves can do, is hit the fucking ball away, you know what I mean, Trevor? So it just didn't make any sense whatsoever. Didn't address their problems. But they lost 5-1. That's a lot. And Arsenal missed a penalty, and the goal was a gift. I mean, the goals between the two of them were quite scary. Vinicius Junior is sulking because he's no longer the main man. He never got his Ballon d'Or. Mbappe is the biggest star. Mbappe is playing central. He doesn't want to play central. He wants to play on the left. Jude Bellingham is playing in behind. When he looks up and wants to attack the space, there's no space for him to attack because Kylian Mbappe stands centrally as a central striker. And so they've got one or two problems, but they'll get a new coach. Carlo Ancelotti is a legend within the game, isn't he? He's a great footballer. He's a great manager. I just think that I don't want to call him a dinosaur because he's not, and I think he's won the Champions League 6 out of the last 11. I just think that with this group of players now at Real Madrid, you need to do more work with him on the training ground, to give him a base to play from. And he doesn't do that. He kind of just goes. I don't know what he comes with the badge, Trevor. The Real Madrid badge, the arrogance and entitlement. Because all we've listened to in the last 8 days is, 90 minutes at the Bernabeu is a long time, and this is what we're going to do, and then they turn up and produce that. So it isn't always enough, Trevor. You can't always hide behind the badge and behind the stadium or whatever. Sometimes you have to look at your team and go, we need to do more work with these, or we need this type of players and whatever it is. So it'd be interesting to see what they do in terms of possibly a new coach and what they do in terms of recruitment. And while we're at it, and because of the uncertainty over Carlo Ancelotti's future and whatever, somebody even mentioned today that could that impact Trent and the thinking behind him?
Yeah,
I really don't know. Interesting.
It will be interesting because it's obviously that was a previous plan, which now, maybe has a different slant on it. But they are what they are, and they are unfortunately no longer relevant to us nor our Arsenal when it comes to the European Cup or the Champions League, whatever you want to call it. But what is relevant is the league, and we have Leicester ahead, and we follow that up with Spurs, and we know that 2 wins there wins it for us, Jan. It's a super position to be in. Incredibly exciting position to be in. I know by you, from what you've already said on previous shows and today, that you feel that it's a job that should get done. We've often thought that, and sometimes our banana skins are the teams that are in the lower echelons of the division, but that's just the Premier League for you as well. Leicester, for people who aren't necessarily familiar with how they've been getting on, well, I mean, it's a tough ask for Leicester at the moment. Leicester are sitting there looking up at everybody else on 18 points after the 32 games, and they have had some dubious results, as you might imagine, to get them into that position. Last time out, they did have a 2 each with Brighton. The time before that, though, beaten 3 by Newcastle at Leicester. They had a 2-0 away defeat to Manchester City. United beat them 3-0 at Leicester's place. Chelsea beat them with Leicester away. And previous to that, West Ham beat them with Leicester away as well. It's been a tale of doom for them this season, Jan. Not a good year in any way, shape or form. And even just the makeup of the team, I suppose people are looking at and thinking, well, I recognize some of those names. Weren't they good at one point? Last time out, just for the record, their reasonably good result against Brighton, the 2-2. They lined up with Hermanson and goals, Cody, Okoli, Justin and Thomas across the back, Sumare and Didi, McAteer, El Canus, Mavdidi and Vardy up top. And then I hear myself saying those names and less of them are familiar because we know what happened with that squad. It got pretty well poached. Off their bench, they can take Patson Daka, who was the next big thing a few years ago. Hasn't really worked out for him. Bobby De Cordova-Reid. They've got Oliver Skip. And they've got Jake Evans, Jordan Ayew, Jakub Stolarczyk as well, and Wayo Koulibaly, and they also have Aluko on there. In terms of the threat that they possess, look, it's a Premier League team, and you underestimate anyone in the Premier League at your peril. But when you look at them and you weigh up what they've done so far this season, what do you put it down to? What is their season been about?
So obviously the biggest problem Leicester had was that when they got promoted, their manager got poached by Chelsea. which the squad had been put together to play the way that he wanted to play, which was obviously heavily possession-based. You mentioned what's their threat. I mean, the laziest thing would be to say Jamie Vardy in it, but I can't really see how Jamie Vardy can hurt us. So they got a couple of wide men who are quite quick feet and quite capable. They played quite well in the second half against Brighton. They caused a bit of trouble for Brighton, isn't it? But I think then they brought Steve Cooper in, and Steve Cooper as a manager, as a defensive manager, you know, he wants to get people behind the ball. And if you haven't got a squad that can defend, which Leicester don't, it was always going to be trouble. Although, having said that, I thought he did well in terms of getting the points that he got, and I still think it's a miracle looking at that Leicester squad and the fact they got 18 points. I think that's a lot of points for that squad because I just don't see. You look and you go, where is the Premier League quality? You mentioned the goalkeeper Hermansen there. He's probably the best out of the lot. He's a good shot stopper. He's great with his feet. Somebody might be willing to take a gamble on him. Apart from that, I really struggle with it, Trevor. Ruud van Nistelrooy coming in after Steve Cooper has been nothing but a disaster. Difficult way to point the finger. Director of football who's brought in some players who with no Premier League quality, or Ruud van Nistelrooy not being able to do more than he's done. It's difficult. And one thing is for know is that for the time being, the Leicester City fans are pointing the finger at the director of football. They're blaming him for the debacle. He's the one who brought the players who are blatantly nowhere near good enough.
And just before we move on to get a feel for the how you think it's going to go, the next opposition for the Reds then is at Anfield, and it is obviously going to be against Spurs, and that's exciting to think about, that we could possibly win the league at home. And I know you think is likely, but Spurs play tonight, unless I'm mistaken, in the Europa, and they have I think they're at 1-1 from the first leg. It's pretty tight anyway, from what I can recall. That will have a bearing, won't it? If they get through tonight, it's probably good news for us, in that you can imagine Ange focusing all the eggs into the basket of the Europa League, because it's the trophy that's available to them. And I haven't followed this Ange drama as much as many people have. I don't watch as much of the post-match stuff as I used to do. So I haven't seen this stuff. And apparently he's developed this reputation, Jan, for being very surly and grumpy in post-match interviews. And it feels like the wheels are coming off a bit. And people have been very high on him. First of all, do you reckon it's to our favor if they get through in Europe tonight? Second of all, or does that even matter, because maybe they want to play people for momentum? And second of all, then the Ange Postecoglou thing. What's your feel on where he's going as a coach? Do you see Spurs retaining his services?
So Ange being the way he is, surly, grumpy, I think that's his personality. You know, I just think that's part of his personality. You know, and in his first season when he did quite well, I think people quite enjoyed that side of him. So I've spoken to him, and I've always enjoyed talking to him because he's very honest. I'm not talking about officially or interviewing or whatever. I'm talking, and he's very honest. Although he wouldn't commit on this thing, but he was a Liverpool fan or not. Although he said that he used to watch a lot of Liverpool fans with his dad. He said my dad was a big Liverpool fan, but he never went any further than that. It doesn't matter what he's in the Premier League as long as he's in Europe. No Premier League results are going to get him the sack as long as he's in Europe. But they have a tricky game tonight against Frankfurt. If they get knocked out, I don't know whether he'll survive or not. But I just think that so much water gone under the bridge that I find it almost impossible for Spurs to be able to keep him. I think they've lost the fourth most games in the Premier League this season. I think they've lost 17 games, Trevor. I mean, that is mental, isn't it? So there's obviously issues. Last summer, they went out and bought a lot of really young players, which they've obviously. The good thing with those young players is they played a lot more minutes than what they normally would have done because of the injuries, isn't it? But even when the injured players are coming back, aren't they? Romero and Van der Veen and all of them are coming back, and nothing has improved, has it? So there's obviously a deep lying issue with either the way he wants to play or the way that he gives his message across, or whether the players are just that this guy's not going to be here for much longer. I think that's the way it's heading. I just can't see Spurs. If Spurs wants to do what Spurs wants to do, and of course they want to do that, they got that big, brilliant stadium, they got good match day income, and they want to be competitive, don't they? Their dream with this new stadium was Champions League every year, and now there's 5 places, isn't it? So Spurs' ambition can only be to be in the Champions League, and I don't think Daniel Levy, whatever we make of him, is going to sit there and go, I still believe Ange's the right man. But if he wins the Europa League, gets him into the Champions League, I think he'll get to start next season.
That's it. That's the one, isn't it? It's really hinging on that for him at that club as well. I think the potential of them winning that trophy, and I guess they have it in them to do it. Be interesting to see. Be interested to see how the game goes tonight, and obviously that will affect how we talk next week. But we do have Leicester at the weekend, which will leave us, if we can win it, just one win away from this magical title number that we're all looking at. How do you see it going, man?
I don't know what last week's result might have done for Leicester. Leicester are going down. We all know that. But they are not down yet, are they? And you do fight, you do fight to, because it's the most demoralizing thing in the world, isn't it? Is that we're now relegated, like Southampton. They're now relegated, aren't they? So for as long as you can, so Leicester will give it everything they've got. In terms of quality, they're nowhere near our level. I can't see us starting to run up 4 or 5s. So I think it'd be Leicester City 0. They don't score many goals, Trevor, that's for sure. Leicester City 0, Liverpool 2.
Yeah, well, I'll bite your hand off for that, my friend. I'll tell you that much. Just one last thing. I see it addressed there in the comments, and I just want to talk about it. There's been, and you'll be aware of it, a massive chat about the standard of the Premier League this year. I saw Henry Winter go out on a limb there and do a little piece on video talking about, I think he was reading his own article, talking about how there's not enough credit being given to Liverpool. I just want to give you just the last word of the show on this. It really feels like people are going out of their way to talk about, how it's the standard isn't what it should be, or people are injuries, or all sorts of these mitigating factors, without just simply saying, look at Liverpool's record, look at how many wins they have, look at how few defeats they have. They are going to be worthy champions, Jan. It's that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like they're getting their flowers.
No, but for a lot of people, there are things that don't stack up to it. We've had no title race as such. Manchester City, for a lot of people, are the standard bearers, and they are in one hell of a battle to get into the top 5. So some people are assuming that Manchester City decides whether it's a great Premier League season or not. And then, of course, add into that Manchester United and Spurs haven't been as poor as they've been. But that has nothing to do with Liverpool. The fact that Manchester United have been poor has nothing to do with Liverpool, because they are not one of our competitors anyway, are they? They wouldn't be anywhere near us anyway. So I'm a bit where you are, Trevor, in terms of wins, only 2 defeats in the Premier League and whatever. All you can do is do your job and win your games. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about people wanting to criticize and say this isn't what it normally is, and maybe that is that lack of a title race, isn't it? That just gets people's juices flowing, and that hasn't been the case this year, because Liverpool have been too good. Liverpool have been far better than everybody else, and that's all that really matters, isn't it?
Yeah, you've nailed it there at the end. Sticking the landing as ever, Mr. Molby. Thanks for that. That has been Molby on the Spot. I've been Trev. That's been Jan. This was our chat on Molby on the Spot, and we'll be back with you next week. Cheers, buddy.